Glide star, long star, air brake is on, set, missed approach altitude.
2000 feet set, sleeper approach.
Disregard.
Checked, landing check.
Landing check is the gear.
Down in 3 greens.
Flap the brakes.
Yellow and checked.
Flaps.
33 required and indicating.
T3 cross check, airframe up the ice and the ice. They are off, air conditioning on, landing lights.
To go.
The landing lights to go.
Roger, disconnecting auto funnel.
Checked.
Hello again everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to be taking a look at the soon to be released Just Flight RJ Professional. For those that aren't aware, the RJ is essentially an upgraded version of the BAE 146, which of course Just Flight have previously released. The aircraft boasts a full electronic flight instrument system as well as a much upgraded auto flight system. The Just Flight 146 is without a doubt an excellent add-on, but the aircraft can require quite a bit of manual input from the pilot. Its navigation system is also fairly limited, and both of these factors can lead to quite a high workload. The RJ Professional, by comparison, certainly kicks things up a notch in terms of automation and as well ease of navigation. So the aircraft is an add-on that I've really been looking forward to actually. It certainly hits the sweet spot, at least for myself, in terms of old technology meeting new. Once again, Just Flight have been kind enough to reach out to me, asking whether or not I would like to take a look at the aircraft ahead of its release. At this point in time, I think it's very fair to say that Just Flight are synonymous with quality add-on releases within Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I was certainly very keen to take a look at the jet. However, as always, do bear in mind this is still technically an early access product. The RJ is very close to release, so I think most of what you'll see here will be what you get with the final product, but as always, do bear in mind there may be changes, tweaks and fixes ahead of release. For our flight today, we'll be starting on the ground at Glasgow Airport up in Scotland, and we're going to be recreating an old RJ service, taking the aircraft back home towards London City. The flight time today should be around 1 hour and 30 minutes. We're uploading 9 tonnes of fuel, cruising our way over at flight level 290. We're expecting 87 passengers on board the jet. And for those of you who aren't aware, the arrival into London City is rather exciting. We've got a 5.5 degree glide slope to contend with later on during the approach. The RJ is very much designed with this in mind, so I think the flight's going to make for a great testing schedule for the aircraft. I'm really looking forward to the flight today. Again, I was very keen to get my hands on the RJ. I do hope you enjoy things as well. As always, if you do, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. If you'd like to help support the channel further, you can do so by becoming a channel member or patron. So this morning then, we find ourselves in the cockpit of the absolutely superb Just Flight RJ Professional. Once again, currently on the ground at a fairly cold, wet and miserable Glasgow Airport, and we're going to be taking the aircraft on its return sector back towards London City. Gotta say, really looking forward to showing you the RJ. It is another excellent add-on from Just Flight. Obviously the aircraft does bear quite a few similarities to the Just Flight 146, but as you can see we've got some fairly significant upgrades here by way of the autopilot, as well as the onboard EFIS systems. And overall those do make the aircraft a lot more user-friendly. It's certainly going to lighten up the workload during the flight, as we'll demonstrate. I thought we'd start with the cold and dark jet, just so that you can hear the sound set in its entirety. Another excellent sound set from Just Flight. So for the flight deck safety checks, the batteries, firstly just checking the voltages, we're looking for at least 24 volts. We've got 25 there on bat 1, and same there on bat 2, so we'll take the battery masters on. Voltages have been checked for the bus ties, both set through to auto. The standby inverter and generators are set through to armed. Generator 1 and 4 switches both selected off. The APU generator is selected on, and we'll start up the APU. Just take the left inner fuel pump here as well for the APU. Again, no ground power today, again just using the APU, and that will allow us to hear all the startup sounds as we go. So external power is selected off. Yaw dampers masters 1 and 2 are selected on. For the FGC we'll leave that on system 1. Autopilot masters can go on, same as well for the avionics masters. Ground ignition for the return sector will come on to system B. Brake fans can go through to auto. Anti-skid is selected on. Auto spoilers are armed, and for the lift spoilers there on the yellow and the green systems, those are selected on. APU is now available. For the air conditioning, in terms of the packs, those are currently selected off. RAM air switch is set through to shut. APU air is selected on. We can now take the packs on here as well. We'll start warming up the cabin a little bit. Flight deck and cabin temperature selectors both set through to auto. For the flight deck and the cabin fans, we'll set those on. And for the cabin air here, we'll set that through to recirc. For the hydraulics, AC pump is selected on. We'll take the PTU on here as well. Nav lights are selected on. And for the rest of the lighting here, we'll take the no smoking signs through to auto. Cabin emergency lights through to armed. Cockpit emergency lighting is set through to armed. And for the seatbelt signs, already fueled up the jet. We'll talk more about that in a moment. We'll take the fasten seatbelt signs on. The signs are set for the flight instruments. Again, we do now have an onboard EFIS. So firstly, we'll take the EFIS masters on both on my side and on the first officer side. For the altimeters, QNH this morning is 996.
Good afternoon, EG7043, flight level 290, direct feedback.
So we've got 996 both on the left, on the standby, and same there as well there on the right. For the standby attitude indicator,
EG7043, London, roger.
that is set, and a nice little animation there as well. For the VOR selections, we're going to be departing off the SID initially based on the Glasgow VOR, so 115.4. We'll take the DMEs on here as well, and we'll just tune that up on both sides. So 115.4 on my side.
Good afternoon, Jersey 555, climbing flight level 210, radar heading is 175.
And same there as well on the first officer side. The IRSs, those switches just located down on the right hand side of the first officer, we'll set those straight through to nav. And we'll align the IRSs in just a moment's time. For the EFIS selections for now, we'll just come through to range 20 here on both sides. And we'll take data. And as well, we'll take the airports here on the nav display. So that's it in terms of the instrument setup. For the flight annunciators, we'll carry out a test. So just checking the cockpit lighting.
Wind shear.
And the test is complete. We'll carry out a test here as well of the MWS. And again, we do have good indications. So MWS can come back to the normal position. We'll cancel the mast caution and the master warning. The autopilot, initially off the SID, we'll brief up the SID later on, but we're going to be departing out on course of 050, so we'll set that here on both sides.
Jersey 555, London, climb flight level 230.
So 050 on the left. Overall, the selections are very nice. Reasonably rapid, but not too quick as to make things difficult to select, so 050 there on both sides. We'll talk more about the V-speeds as well later on, but it's going to be a flaps 18 departure. V2 there is 144. We'll set that up here on the MCP.
230, Jersey 555.
It's 144. Again, for the heading, we'll select 050.
Anya 223 Alpha, climb flight level 310, set course direct Southampton.
And our initial stop height for the departure is 6,000 feet. Lastly as well here, we'll take on the flight directors. So mine first, flight director 1 is the master, and there's flight director 2. So the autopilot is set. We'll now come down to the MCDU and begin setting that up for the flight. Then we'll come into the FMC page. In terms of the aircraft status, we are an Avro RJ100. You can see the nav database here is out of date, and we're showing nav data out of date, so we'll clear the message.
Jersey 555, navigation Southampton.
Onto the POSINIT page, we'll select our last position and set that to align the IRSs. Reference airport is Glasgow. Doesn't seem as though at the moment we can actually put in the stand.
Southampton, Jersey 555.
So again, we'll just align based on our previous position. In terms of the routing then, Glasgow, Echo Golf, Papa Foxtrot, and we are bound for London City, Echo Golf, Lima, Charlie. In terms of the runway, we're going to be departing off runway 05, and for the flight number today, it is Charlie Fox Echo 8723, so BA City Flyer. In terms of the departure itself, again departing off runway 05, and we're going to be flying the Norbo 1 Juliet departure.
Cafe 002, contact London 134.9. Bye-bye.
That's going to take us out towards waypoint Norbo. From there we'll be picking up the Tango 256 airway.
349, Cafe 2, bye.
And the route today is not going to take us very long to build. From Tango 256 out towards waypoint Rovla, Romeo, Oscar, Victor Lima Alpha. On to the next page, from Rovla we're picking up the Up Tango 256, and that's bound for Dean's Cross, Delta, let's clear that a second, Up Tango 256 and Dean's Cross, Delta Charlie Sierra. And from Dean's Cross it'll be the Upper Lima 612 airway, and that's going to take us out towards waypoint Listo, Lima, India, Sierra, Tango, Oscar. So we can activate all of that, we'll hit execute. The message there wants us to enter the performance init data, we'll certainly do that in just a moment, we'll just clear the message for now. For the arrival into London City later on, expecting the ILS for runway 09, and we're going to be flying the Listo 1 Charlie departure. And we'll be flying the Oddleg 1 Juliet transition. There's Oddleg 1 Juliet. And again, we can execute all of that. Just briefly running through the legs page. So departing off 05, we do have various speed and altitude restrictions on the departure and the arrival. That takes out towards Norbo, on towards waypoint Rovla, Delta Charlie Sierra, again Dean's Cross, and then in towards Listo, and then once again picking up the Listo 1 Charlie, and onto the Oddleg transition. There's Oddleg, onto the ILS for 09. In terms of the init ref then, for the planned zero fuel weight at the moment, that is 34.7 tonnes. Fuel on board the jet currently is 9 tonnes. We've got quite a bit up our sleeves today. You can see the planned fuel there, 7.4 tonnes. I'm taking an extra hour's worth of fuel, partly to cater for the potential fog into London City, and also carrying a typical 30 minutes extra, given that this is a new add-on that we're flying here today. In terms of our onboard reserves, London Heathrow is our alternate today, and we need 2.2 tonnes for the diversion. Planned cruise altitude, flight level 290. In terms of the cruise wind, we're looking at 178 degrees at 30 knots. ISO deviation plus 4 degrees. And transition altitude of 6,000, that is correct. So we'll hit execute. Now just coming onto the progress page on my side. We do have the onboard tablet, we'll take a look at that during the flight itself. For now we're just going to brief up off the paper chart. So once again we are going to be flying the Norbo 1 Juliet departure, that is plate 10-3 Delta. It's a conventional SID, again primarily based off the Glasgow VOR. But again, of course today we're primarily going to be flying the departure here based off the navigational data in the box. So for the Norbo 1 Juliet off runway 05, that has us initially climbing straight ahead to intercept the Glasgow 050 radial outbound. 4.9 miles over waypoint Zexus, and then crossing at or above 2,000. Max stop height again 6,000 feet, making a left turn to track 246 out towards waypoint Elban. Crossing Elban at 6,000 feet and holding 6,000 here until we come over waypoint Norbo. In terms of speed restrictions, we've got 250 knots below 10, that's obviously not going to be an issue for us. No turns below 530 feet, so essentially 500 foot above aerodrome elevation. And again, that initial stop height of 6,000 feet. In terms of the terrain, there is some more significant terrain out to the north of Glasgow. We've got an MSA there up at 4,900 feet. And if we're not limited by the weather, you should see some of that terrain here on the departure. It's quite a beautiful departure out of Glasgow. In terms of the weather, we do have low visibility conditions, quite a bit of rain around as well. Nice and benign though in terms of the wind, and the conditions overall are such that if we do need to come back for a Cat 1 ILS onto 05, we should be able to do so. Lastly, in terms of the taxi, again currently on stand 15 on the domestic pier here at Glasgow. Once we push back, we'll come onto Golf, and then a nice straightforward taxi. We're just going to be taking Golf all the way around to holding point Golf for runway 05. That's it then in terms of the briefing. We've yet to start boarding the passengers, so we'll take a quick look here through the cabin ahead of the boarding. Once more, Just Flight have done a really excellent job with that. We have a little bit more to do here in terms of the setup, so we'll carry on with that, and I'll join you back here again on the flight deck just ahead of our push and start.
Insert the metal tag into the buckle and tighten by pulling on the loose end. To unfasten, simply lift up the metal flap on the buckle and pull apart. You'll find the seatbelt sign in the panel above your head. When it's on, you must fasten your seatbelt. We'll provide extension seatbelts for infants. We suggest you keep
Okay, so we have now completed the last of our pre-flight preparations. Everybody's on board the jet, the doors are closed up. We've got the cockpit door closed here as well, and that is now locked. So for the before start checks, the briefing is complete, the brakes are set through to park, we're on the yellow system, the hydraulic pressure is checked. The hydraulics panel will take the PTU off, same here as well for the AC pump. And you can see there the green system is depressurized, same as well there for the yellow system. Just cancel the master caution. In terms of the fuel panel, we do have fuel on board in the center tank today, so we'll set the center tank transfer switch through to auto. We'll take the remaining fuel pumps on here as well. And in terms of our fuel state, we've got 3,700 kilos there on the left, same on the right. So 7,400 plus 1,600 in the center. That gives us 9 tons across the board versus 9 tons, which is what we want from the flight plan. In terms of the lights and notices, fasten seatbelt signs are on. No smoking signs are set through to auto. We'll take the beacon on here as well ahead of the start. The air conditioning, we'll take the packs off. APU air can go off there as well, and again just cancelling the master caution. The thrust levers, those are in the fuel off position. Altimeters are set. We have a QNH of 9 and 9 and 6. AC power is set as required. For the thrust rating panel, you can see we've now selected a reduced thrust takeoff, a flex takeoff if you like. That's based on an assumed temperature of 30 degrees. So we're targeting 90.7 here on the M1s for the takeoff, and you can see we've got that set across the board. In terms of our V-speeds, again, it's a flaps 18 departure here out of Glasgow, based on a 44-ton takeoff data card. So V1 VR is 139, V2 144, we've got that set there on the MCP, and VFTO minimum clean speed is 191. Flight directors are selected on, master flight director there on my side for the trims. Neutral there on the rudder trim, neutral there as well on the aileron trim, 4 units nose up on the elevator trim. The start checks, the beacon, once again, is selected on, packs are selected off, APU air is off. Engine anti-ice, interestingly on both the 146 and the RJ, we want that on here ahead of the start. That's quite unusual, I've not seen that on anything I've flown. I presume the idea is to keep the EGTs down here during the start. If anybody knows any better, please do let me know. Anyway, engine anti-ice is selected on, brake fans are selected off, AC pump is off, fuel pumps are selected on. The start panel, we'll take the start master on, we're going to be starting the number 4 engine first, so start selector through to the number 4. And lastly the transponder is selected on, that is the before start checklist complete. Double take the park brake off, obviously it's going to take a little bit of time here to start all 4 engines, so we'll get things underway. Starting the number 4, you can see there's quite a big draw there from the APU during the start process, so overall the system's modelled very nicely, as you'd expect. We're waiting for at least 10% here on the N2 before we introduce the fuel. There we have 10%. So for the number 4 thrust lever, we'll set that into the fuel on position. We do have a good light off. N1's coming up. And we have a good fuel flow, oil pressure there coming up as well. And you can see the oil pressure warning light is now extinguished. The start sounds on the aircraft are pretty quiet overall. Generally speaking, the sound set is excellent on the RJ, so that may well be true to life in terms of the noise levels from the engine during the start. We have now commenced the push. And a good start there on the number 4, start the number 3.
British 940, contact London 135.2, goodbye.
Again, waiting on 10% N2.
135.32 British 940, bye.
And 10% we have. Number 3 lever into the fuel on position. And again, good light off, positive fuel flow, oil pressure is coming up. So once again, we're just pushing back here into the apron. We'll taxi out and then left via Gulf. Just keeping an eye here on the push. Oil pressure warning light is extinguished.
Britannia 223 Alpha, contact London 135.42, goodbye.
And that'll do us in terms of the push. So we'll set the park brake on. And we can release the tug. Good start there on the number 3. Starting the number 2. So tug is clearing.
5.42, Britannia 223 Alpha, bye bye.
And we have 10% now on the N2. So fuel on.
Jersey 555, contact London 129.42, goodbye.
And once again, good light off, oil pressure coming up. Ground crew are now clear. Oil pressure warning light extinguished. So just waiting on the number 2 now to stabilise.
12942, Jersey 555, bye.
And good start there on the number 2, so lastly starting the number 1. So of course it does take a little bit of time here to get the RJ started up with all 4 engines. There's our 10%. And a little bit fiddly as well I find to get the click spot here of the number 1. So fuel on. There's our light off.
Pakistan 791, and 1 ready, flight level 220 to be level at Camel.
Oil pressure coming up. You'll notice here as well, all of the oil pressures, all of the oil quantities, temperatures, same as well for the engine vibration, all reading slightly different. So again, very nice nuance in terms of the aircraft systems and the systems modelling.
Descent level 220 to be level by Hamel, Pakistan 791.
And we're just about to stabilise here as well on the number 1, so we do have 4 good starts. For the after start checklist then, the start panel will set the start selector back through to the off position. And the start master can go off here as well. Engine anti-ice will leave on, it's 9 degrees currently on the OAT, obviously quite a bit of moisture around. In terms of the generators, we'll take Gen 1 on.
Delta 21 with you 280.
And same here as well for Gen 4. AC external power is again selected off and disconnected. Brake fans set through to auto. A little bit tricky to get to there, right on the top of the panel. The hydraulics will take the engine 2 pump on. Same here as well for the engine 3 pump. The AC pump can go through to auto. Once more we'll take the PTU on. They're both the yellow and the green systems are now pressurised. For the heaters we'll take the screen heat on. Same as well for the vane and pitot heating. Once again, speeds and M1s have been checked. For the APU air, we'll take that on once again. That's going to power the packs here for the takeoff. We'll leave the engine bleeds off. That seems to be the typical configuration here for the takeoff in the RJ. So APU and engine air is set, packs are on. Cabin air we've got set through to recirc. Lastly then, in terms of the flaps, again it's going to be a flaps 18 departure. We have flaps 18 selected. And we'll just wait for those to run out. Bit of the taxi, we'll take the taxi lights on. Runway exit lights can go on here as well. And still a little bit wet, miserable outside, so we'll take the wipers on here as well.
Delta 21, good afternoon.
Just set those through to slow for the time being. So we have flaps 18 selected, indicated again, flaps 18 here for the departure. We are all clear on the right, ground crew are clear, clear on the left, park brake can come off. Again then, in terms of the taxi, we're currently facing north at the domestic pier, so we're going to take a left once we come onto Golf, all the way down the taxiway to holding point Golf, for a full-length departure here off Glasgow's runway 05.
Radar 45, we're remaining to the west now. It's going to be here for about 5 minutes around the Westminster area, but in the city zone. Would you like to give us a call 12562?
Arena 45, roger, that's understood. Yes, you're running that far west and go direct to Heathrow Red, I know, thank you.
Cheers, thanks everything, bye.
Jersey 1325, left stand 22, stand 22. Okay, left stand 22, Jersey 1325.
Okay, so we are now lined up here on Glasgow's runway 05, just running through the before takeoff checklist. Brakes have been checked, the flaps, we have flaps 18 selected and indicated, flight instruments are checked. Weather radar is set, the trims are set, we'll carry out a takeoff config test. And no warning there for us. For the igniters, we'll set those through to continuous. For the flight controls, one minor criticism I would level there, you can see the animation on the yoke is a little bit limited in terms of FPS.
130 Nana 2, bye-bye Pakistan, 7 Nana 1.
The flight controls have been checked. Auto throttle is set through to armed, landing lights are selected on, transponder is set through to TARA. We'll take the wipers through to fast. It does look as though we're going to be negotiating a little bit of weather here during the departure. We'll just hold the aircraft on the brakes, coming through to 55% N1. You'll notice even with a very modest flex takeoff temperature that the RJ chews through quite a bit of runway here during the takeoff. So the engines are stable. There's a little click spot here on the VOR unit, set toga thrust. So we have takeoff reduced there on the FMA, thrust coming up.
Airspeed alive.
That's checked. And the thrust is set. Overall the aircraft feels okay on the rudder, a little bit more towards the sensitive end of the spectrum, but it's easy enough to keep on the centre line. Though bearing in mind there's no crosswind here at the moment, that's checked 80 knots. Just come up through 100 knots. And again you can see using up quite a bit of runway here in the RJ.
Cool.
There's V1.
Rotate.
And back on the yoke. They're pitching initially for around 10 degrees nose up. We do have a positive climb.
Gear up, select.
Bring up the gear. So we'll just trim here for 10 degrees. We're looking to maintain V2 plus 10. And we've got the gear up now, so we'll take the wipers off here as well.
Ryan, correction, EV7043, contact London 135.32. Goodbye.
Just coming up through 500 feet, so we'll take the autopilot and we'll come into LNAV. And already, as you can see, a much reduced workload here on the RJ versus the 146. So we'll maintain takeoff power here till we're up through 1500 feet, tracking out towards waypoint ZESUS now. Then it'll be a left turn. Again, as per the chart, picking up the 050 radial and then a left turn back out towards the north of the field. We'll just hold the after takeoff checks here until we've got the aircraft accelerating. So just coming up through 1500 feet, we'll accelerate now up towards 210 knots initially.
532 EZ7043, bye.
And we're coming to level change here for the acceleration. Just holding the thrust apparently till we've got the aircraft clean. We should commence the left turn momentarily. And again, VFTO we said is 191 knots. So commencing the turn.
Good afternoon, 10927, flight level 250.
Just monitoring that speed.
And we're direct about.
Ryanair 9287, good afternoon. You can set course now direct to Compton, then direct to
Speed checked. Flaps 0.
So speed is checked. We'll come through to flap 0. We'll take the runway turn-offs off. And as you can see again, as per the brief, we do have quite a bit of high terrain here on the departure. So we'll just hold the speed here at 210 knots. Get the aircraft climbing away from the terrain. We can accelerate up towards 250 once we've cleared the hills. Out of the worst of the rain now, so we'll take the igniters off. Just hold the engine anti-ice for now. And staying on the QNH here as well for the initial stages of the departure again, levelling off at 6,000. So if the after takeoff checklist, gear is up, lights are out, flaps are up. On the thrust rating panel now, we'll come back towards climb thrusts. So looking at about 85% on the M1s. We'll take the engine air on now. We can relieve the APU of its workload. And we can shut down the APU here as well. So APU air is selected off, packs are on. APU is running down, the igniters are off, that is the after takeoff checklist complete. We'll just cancel the master caution. Looks there as though it was transitory. So again, in terms of the MSA, we said 4,900 feet. Just come up through 3,900. We'll hold the speed here till we come up through the MSA. Doesn't look as though we're painting too much in terms of any weather. But again, really cracking view of those hills. As we briefed here out to the north of Glasgow. So starting our turn now back out towards the southwest. And then we'll be picking up the track inbound towards waypoint Norbo.
Delta 21, contact London 127.1. Bye.
127.1, Delta 21.
Just coming up on the MSA, so we'll set 250 knots now for the climb.
London, good afternoon, EG6131, climbing flight level 210, heading 130.
There's 250 selected and 1,000 to go. So ordinarily levelling off at 6,000 until we hit waypoint Norbo, but we'll assume today we've been given a climb now clearance straight up to our cruising altitude, flight level 290.
EG6131, thanks, continue on that heading, climb flight level 240.
We've got 290 selected, and again just holding level change 250 knots. We'll be coming up through 6,000, which is the transition altitude, and we're going up now to a flight level, so we'll set 1013 on the altimeters.
Heading climb flight level 240, EG6131.
We've got 2992 there on the left, there on the standby, and same there as well on the right. For the climb checks then, altimeters are set, the PTU can go off. Pressurization is checked, you can see there the delta P increasing, cabin is climbing, we've got 700 feet cabin altitude at the moment. In terms of the lights, just holding the landing lights a little bit longer. Again, we do have the runway exit lights turned off. And there's not going to be much in terms of any turbulence here, I think, as we come up through the second cloud layer, so we'll just cycle the signs there for the cabin crew. So we've got about another 20 miles to run here towards Norbo, coming up through 7,000 feet, we'll get the landing lights off at 10. In terms of the MWS, we've got fuel transfer, so burning down our centre fuel now, just coming up on 1,100 kilograms. Engine anti-ice is still selected on, OAT currently 0 degrees. We are clear of the cloud for now, so we'll just take the engine anti-ice off for now.
100, good afternoon, British 85 Alpha, flight level 260 towards Compton. British 85 Alpha, thanks, continue on the heading for Compton as a radar heading.
So again, holding the lights here till we're up through 10, we'll hold the speed back. We're going to accelerate up towards 280 knots here for the climb once we're through 10,000. And currently we're getting around 3,000 feet per minute rate of climb, so pretty good performance here from the RJ currently. Again, the aircraft is a little bit sluggish during the takeoff run, a little bit sluggish as well with the flaps out initially during the climb. Once we get up into the higher flight levels as well, you don't get a whole lot of performance. We do also have the option here for an increased climb thrust, but we'll hold off on using that. Save the operator a little bit of money.
On the heading, that's 305, British 85 Alpha.
So just approaching 10,000, we'll take the landing lights off. We'll keep the passengers sat down for the time being. And up through 10, so we can accelerate now up towards 280 knots. Unfortunately, not a whole lot to see in terms of scenery today. Obviously, again, we do have that low layer of cloud, quite a bit of fog as well en route. Hopefully we should get some pretty good views of the city later on though as we make our way inbound towards London. In the meantime then, at the moment on the progress page, 13:25 arrival into London. So we've got about an hour and 10 minutes en route, 450 miles, that looks pretty reasonable. 105 miles to top climb, and currently showing arriving into London City with about 4.7 tons. Again, we said min divert fuel was 2.2, and catering for about an extra hour's worth of fuel. So there we're looking at about 2,400. So that looks pretty good in terms of fuel calculation currently. In the meantime then, just continuing in towards waypoint Norbo, that'll be the end of the SID. We'll talk through the tablet a little bit later on during the cruise. We've got a bit of time to kill en route towards London. But now though, again, just continuing the climb here up to cruising flight level 290. As usual, we'll take a bit of a look at the aircraft externally en route. We'll talk through the tablet as I mentioned. And we'll come back for top of descent, which will be pretty early today. Definitely a bit of a second-class citizen heading into London City. We've got to get the aircraft down way ahead of time. We're going to be making multiple step descents all the way out over the eastern coastline of the United Kingdom. We'll obviously talk more about that during the arrival briefing. For now, you can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight.
This is 3 Romeo November, descent altitude 6,000 feet, QNH 1028, level Barassa.
Descent altitude 6,000 feet, QNH 1028, level Barassa to the 3 Romeo November.
Thames good evening, Lufthansa 934, type Ever 90 with information Delta. Out of flight 142, descending 900 inbound Logan.
Okay, so we are now established here in the cruise up at flight level 290, currently maintaining Mach 0.70. As you can see, inbound overhead Manchester and Leeds currently. We've got Teesside there out towards the east of us. So Teesside, Newcastle, just coming overhead the Lake District currently. We've got a reasonably nice view of that. We've got the Isle of Man as well out towards the west. Also just about burned down now our centre tank fuel, just about 160 kilos there to run. And the fuel on board situation arriving into London City has improved quite a bit, showing 5.7 tonnes now for the arrival, nearly 6 tonnes. I thought since we're established now in the cruise, it'd be a good opportunity here to take a look at the onboard tablets. We're not going to focus on it too significantly here. We've already taken a look at very similar tablets with both the Just Flight 146 as well as the Just Flight F28. Currently you can see we are of course on the map page, again just departing the Lake District. We'll just run through each tab, again in fairly brief detail. So for the OFP, we can integrate SimBrief here into the tablet. We haven't done that currently here today, but a nice feature of course to have. For the map, as you've just seen, we've got a very nice en route map. Always nice to know where you are in the world. It's not a feature I use very much, but it is always a nice feature to have. In terms of the charts, obviously we've briefly looked at that already. We'll just demonstrate the chart functionality here by looking up the charts for London City. You can use your keyboard here to input the data, but it will also action any aircraft systems associated with those key presses, so best I find not to. So Echo Golf Lima Charlie for London City. In terms of the arrival, once again we are expecting the Listo 1 Charlie. They're just waiting for that to load in. There's Listo 1 Charlie. We'll just start that. And then in terms of the transition again, the Oddleg 1 Juliet transition onto the ILS runway 09. And we've now got all of those charts saved up, ready later on for the briefing. We'll talk more about that in just a moment's time. In terms of the aircraft options, plenty there as you'd expect. We've got the ability to set chocks, ground power, operate the aircraft stairs and aircraft doors. We can refuel and load the aircraft both instantaneously as well in real time. We can select the aircraft units, so currently of course using kilograms. We can also set various aircraft states and give various commands to the onboard cabin crew. As well, we've got basic weight indications there for the empty weight, zero fuel weight, total fuel on board and the gross weight. Various aircraft options, we won't run through all of those, but again they probably will be very familiar to you if you own the Just Flight 146. So we can set various aircraft equipment, we can set the gauge refresh rate. I might bump that up a little bit, I find it a little bit low at the moment. We can also choose various options in terms of auto cabin crew announcements, first officer announcements. And as well we can adjust the EFB brightness, set various options for pilot callouts, rudder steer axis, state saving, things of that nature. As well as with the 146, we do get the option to set various failures with the RJ Professional, which is really nice to see. As you can see, a pretty comprehensive failure set available to us overall, lots of options there. We'll just briefly run through those. So again, great options on the aircraft overall, definitely one of the higher fidelity modules available for the sim. I would say pretty much up there with the likes of PMDG at this point. In terms of the notes, that's just a basic scratch pad. Potentially quite useful for those of you who fly on VATSIM. In terms of checklists, we have complete checklists for the aircraft, interactable as well, so you can click on those. The aircraft also uses the inbuilt sim checklist feature, and as well, of course, you get checklists with the included manual. I'm using paper checklists here today. We have a top descent calculator. The aircraft does also, though, have basic VNAV functionality included with the FMC. The autopilot itself doesn't seem to fly any VNAV. I think that's as per the real aircraft, but you do get basic calculations for top descent and meeting various restrictions. We'll take a look at that, of course, during the approach. Ordinarily, though, the RJ flies pretty nicely, just a 3-degree profile, so if you just times your altitude by 3, you'll calculate your top descent quite easily. Lastly, in terms of settings, again, fairly basic. You can just set various tablet options. Whilst we're here at the tablet, we might as well brief up the arrival into London City. So again, joining onto the start of our waypoint Listo. And as I mentioned earlier, descending pretty early here for our arrival into London City. We want to be down at flight level 220 at waypoint Odvod. That's going to be a descent much earlier than we'd ordinarily like, but again, it seems that we're at the bottom of the pile here with the London TMA. We've got Heathrow, of course, just out to the west of London City. We've also got Stansted, Luton and Gatwick in pretty close proximity. So joining in via Listo, 220 at waypoint Odvod on the flight level, 250 knots at waypoint Nudna, and holding that back at flight level 120 at waypoint Inlim. Ultimately, that takes us out towards waypoint Jacko over the eastern coastline of the United Kingdom. And at Jacko we want 210 knots, flight level 90. The chart for the star then, 40-2 Echo. It's an RNAV star. We can fly that quite nicely in the RJ, of course. The transition levels by ATC, we'll call it probably 7, maybe even 10,000 today, just to make life easy for us. And Jacko is the clearance limit. There's a warning there, do not proceed past waypoint Jacko without an ATC clearance. In terms of descent planning, we've got various restrictions on the way down. Might be a little bit difficult for you to see here, but we've got 220 at Odvod, 120 at Inlim and 90 at Jacko, as we've just discussed. Actual clearance will be by air traffic control. Again, that takes us onto the Oddleg 1 Juliet RNAV transition. And I wasn't joking, we are being taken around the long way, so we come out via Jacko out to the south, all the way around towards waypoint Elmiv, and then back into Ravsa. So holding flight level 90 till Lima Charlie Echo 23, descending down to 6,000 feet, so we'll be on the QNH at Ravsa. Down to 4,000 for Lima Charlie Echo 07, 3,000 at Ovsev 210 knots, and holding 3,000, max 185 at Lima Charlie 501. And then down to 2,000, holding 2,000 all the way around the corner, so again, keeping pretty low on the profile. Does make it quite a nice, easy approach to fly. And it's a max of 185, so we'll probably come back towards 160 knots, just head of waypoint Top B, just to help the aircraft with the turn. For the transition, plate 40-2 Golf, and then onto the RLS for runway 09. Pretty confident we're going to get that. We've got a pretty nice headwind down 09 today, almost 10 knots. The RLSN is 41-1 for the plate, 09 at London City. Frequency is 111.15, we'll set that later on. Final approach course 092. Aerodrome elevation 20 feet, we've already set that on the pressurization system. And today we're going down to a Cat 1 ILS. I presume the RJ will be a Cat C aircraft, so 430 feet on the altimeter, 411 on the rad out, we'll set those later on. The missed approach, pretty straightforward, climbing straight ahead to 2,000 feet at 5.6 miles off the ILS, making a left turn to come back overhead the locator to hold at 2,000. In terms of the terrain, nothing too significant there. 2,300 for the MSA. Obviously, though, we do have quite a bit of infrastructure on the arrival. Various high-rise buildings. You can see there we've got one up at around 1,100 feet. So again, we'll be maintaining 2,000. That'll keep us clear during the turn, and we'll keep the speed back as well. We should get quite a nice view, actually, of the city as we make our approach into the field. Weather-wise, slightly nice day at London. We've still got fairly low cloud, still a bit of fog around as well. We've taken extra fuel to cater for that. Less rain though, and we're looking at a temperature around 10 degrees. QNH at the moment is 997. Again, we've got a nice headwind down the runway as well. We're looking at about 10 knots out from the east. Our alternate today, as we discussed, is London Heathrow. We need 2.2 tonnes for that, currently showing arriving with nearly 6 tonnes. And we're burning around 2 tonnes an hour, just shy thereof, so we've got nearly 3 hours of endurance on the arrival. That is a lot, but that does make reasonable sense. We've got about a tonne extra in terms of contingency, and I've also uploaded an extra 30 minutes to cater for the fog, as well an extra 30 minutes to cater for the new add-on. We'll be landing on runway 09. It is a pretty short runway at London City, only around 1,500 metres. So we use full braking, it'll be auto spoilers, no reverse for us, and probably having to vacate all the way down at the end, and then taxiing down Tango in towards the apron. That's about it then in terms of the briefing. We'll get the aircraft set up here just ahead of the descent, for now continuing the cruise. We should be just about approaching Listo at this point, so just arriving onto the Star, and about 21 miles out from Odvod or thereabouts we'll commence our descent into London City.
Lufthansa 934, hello, there is no speed restriction, clear to Labno 1 Juliet, transition runway 27.
Lufthansa 934, without speed for the Lufthansa 1 Juliet, runway 27.
November 1 Charlie Charlie, turn left heading 030 degrees.
Left 030, 1 Charlie Charlie.
TTL length 189, climb now to altitude 4,000 feet.
Climb now 4,000 feet, TTL 189.
So welcome back to the flight deck of the RJ. We are now tracking in towards waypoint Odvod, which, as we discussed, is the first of our altitude restrictions on the way down during the arrival. Again, we need about 21 miles here for the descent. It's currently showing 12 miles till our calculated top of descent. And if we come onto the VNAV page of the FMC, you can see currently showing 11 miles there calculated as well. Apparently, typically, descents in the RJ are flown using vertical speed. You can though also use level change. As I mentioned earlier, VNAV I don't think is actually implemented on the aircraft. I think the button there probably just a hangover from the same MCP being used on other aircraft. Anyway, I find if we go into level change straight away, the aircraft can be a little bit aggressive, so we'll initiate the descent here using vertical speed and then we'll refine things thereafter coming back into level change. So once more, initially descending down to flight level 220, we'll set that here on the MCP. There's 220, and showing now 2 miles to our top of descent, so we'll come into vertical speed.
London, good afternoon, EG6441 with you, flight level 390 to Goodwood.
And once more, just initiating the descent here using vertical speed.
EG6441 London, good afternoon, route director Saitek.
And once we've got a nice high rate of descent now, we'll come into level change. So the thrust should roll off completely, and that's now giving us an idle descent down towards 220 Odvod. You can see they're looking pretty good currently in terms of descent. We'll come back onto the progress page. So we are now in the descent down towards flight level 220. We can start setting the aircraft up here for the arrival. We're going to be transitioning over back towards speed as well, so we'll come back towards 280 knots here for the descent. Once we're through Odvod, we can descend thereafter down to flight level 120. We need 10,000 feet there in terms of altitude loss, so that's going to be around 30 miles. So we'll start the descent for Inlim at waypoint Ropmu, or just before. We've got to decelerate there as well, back towards 250 knots. So the aircraft looking good for the time being. Once again, in terms of the setup for the ILS, looking at a frequency there of 111.15. We'll set that on both sides. So 111.15 on my side. And same there as well on the first officer side. In terms of the final approach course, 092. So again, we'll set that on both sides.
London, new jet set 304 Charlie, climb flat 310 radar, heading is 180 degrees.
And there's 092. Just coming down through 25,000 feet. Again, in terms of the MDA, 430 on the altimeter, 411 there on the rad out. Says 430 on the altimeter. And it's going to take us a little bit of time here to scroll, but looking for 411 here on the decision heights. Just up through 300. And again, you can see that calculated descent point just before waypoint Odvod, so looking good here in terms of the descent.
Heading final 350, jet set 304 China, thank you.
There's 400. And we have 411 set there on both sides. Once more, it's going to be manual braking. It's also going to be a steep approach. We didn't mention that earlier on, but we do have a significant gradient for the ILS into London City, as I'm sure many of you are aware. We're looking around 5.5 degrees there on the slope. Just coming down through 1,000 foot to go. So later on we'll be selecting the steep approach mode. We'll hold off on doing that for now. Just wait here for the level off. In terms of the descent checks as well, the PTU is selected on, pressurization is set. Again, we have a landing altitude of 0 feet. For the land flap, it's going to be flaps 33. We've got a landing data card now of 42 tons. We'll talk more about the landing weight in just a moment. Obviously, we can set all of our speeds manually, but as well, we have a very nice feature. We can just click on the appropriate flap value, so 33, and that will set all of the speeds automatically for us. So we're looking at a VREF there of 125, be a V approach of 130 knots. Just coming on the range here on the nav display. And we said we'll start the descent for waypoint Inlim. Just taking a little bit of time again for the chart to load. So we'll start the descent for waypoint Imlin at waypoint Rotmu, and we'll decelerate back towards 250 knots, about 30 knots to lose, so about 5 miles before waypoint Nudna. We'll just center up the heading bug once again.
7.87195, goodbye.
So in terms of the landing weight, at the moment showing 41.3 tons. We've got about another ton to burn down here on the fuel. That's going to have us landing at 40.3, which is actually just over our max landing weight at the moment. So we're going to be pretty marginal there with all the extra fuel we're carrying. In reality, to cater for that, we could take a little bit of drag a little bit early, or otherwise, if we really needed to, just take a lap around the hold ahead of time. But for the sake of today's flight, we'll just see how we go. We're going to be pretty close to max landing weight either way. So level at 220, again going down to 120 for the next descent. We'll just carry out this next descent segment just to give you an idea of how the RJ actually works in reality. Obviously, again, we do have more automation than the 146, but still quite a bit of manual input required from the pilot. So there's 120, and we'll just get the aircraft coming down a little bit early. So again, my preference just to finesse things early on with vertical speed. And once we're established in the descent, we'll come back into level change. Showing about 20 miles to run towards waypoint Nudna, so no need to decelerate just yet. Approaching 20,000 feet, so we'll get the signs on a little bit early. So in terms of the weight, we've discussed that. We are pretty close to max landing weight. In terms of the weather, reasonable conditions. We do have low visibility, but at the moment things looking good. The Cat 1 approach into London. In terms of the terrain, again, no significance. We just got the 2300 MSA. The approach, again, the ILS, we've got the MDA here pre-selected, same as well for the decision heights. And in terms of the aids, we've got 1 and 2 tuned up there to the London City ILS. Once more, just for the landing, manual braking, it'll be a steep approach with flaps 33. We'll be using the air brake to keep the speed back, and as well we'll be using the auto spoilers. That's about it then in terms of the initial setup, just coming down through 20,000 feet. Again, that's got us pretty low overall, still showing 130 miles to run. In reality, we only need around 80 currently. And approaching now Nudna, so we'll just decelerate a little bit early back towards 250 knots. And you can see there the targeted top descent point is before waypoint Imlin, so once we've got the speed back towards 250 knots, we can refine things again with vertical speed. As we've already discussed, we do have multiple altitude and speed constraints here during the arrival. It's going to take us quite a bit of time to fly that. Again, we've still got about 120 track miles to run. I don't think we'll gain all that much here in the video by showing you the entire arrival. So for now, we'll just continue out towards waypoint Jacko. We might give ourselves a little bit of track shortening later on, perhaps towards waypoint Ravsa. And probably the best point to come back here, we'll come back around waypoint Ovsev, so we'll be down at around 3,000 feet, 210 on the speed, and tracking from the south for a right-hand downwind onto 09 at London City.
City on 174, contact City Tower, call sign only 118.075. Tower, call sign only 118.075, bye. Bye. Number 269-174.
City Island 112, runway 27, clear to land, traffic wind 230 degrees 5 knots.
Good land to 70, 112.
Okay, so we are now just approaching waypoint Odsev, about to level off here at 3000. You can see we're just about to meet the restriction. Thereafter we're going to be decelerating back towards 185 knots, and then we can descend further down to 2000, passing waypoint Lima Charlie Sierra 01. In terms of the approach checks, altimeters, we have a QNH of 997 set there on all three altimeters. The seatbelt signs are selected on steep approach. Now select the steep approach mode. And we can start up the APU here as well. We'll be once again taking the APU bleed air on to supply the packs during the latter stages of the approach and for the go-around. So APU just running up, again a transitory caution there, we don't need to cancel that. We'll also just slewed the heading bug around here to runway heading 092 just to save ourselves a little bit of work later on. So 3 waypoint Odsev, we'll decelerate now back towards 185. Initially we'll just come back towards 195. The limit speed for flaps 18 to 205 knots, so we'll just wait until we come through that.
Roger, Dyke, Sandy, Continent, Dublin, Station 623 knots.
And there's 205, speeds checked, we'll go flaps 18.
And
again now decelerating back towards 185 knots. Already picking up the ILS, obviously though we're not going to arm that just yet, continuing on our right hand downwind for the time being. We've got about another 10 miles outbound. And just coming overhead Lima Charlie 001, so descending now down to 2000.
Midlands 8865 London, good afternoon, climb flight level 330.
And we need to be level by the next waypoint, so again we'll just come into vertical speed.
Climb flight level 330, Midlands 8865, that's the cruise speed from level. Roger.
And we'll just use vertical speed here to finesse, so 1000 feet per minute looks to put us 2000 feet at the next waypoint. Just coming down 3-3. And looking good here on speed. Getting a few stutters, that may be the aircraft. It could also be of course so that we are flying into London, which as we all know is pretty intensive here for the sim. You can see the city out there at our 1 o'clock. We'll get a better view of that as we come around the corner. And again we do have the high buildings to negotiate here during the approach, but of course the constraints here on the way down are going to keep us safe in terms of our altitude.
Speed checked. Gear down.
Okay, we are good now on the gear limit speed, but we'll hold the gear for now. We'll wait until we're around 8 miles, currently showing 18. In terms of the APU then, that is now up and running. So we might as well take the APU air on, take the engine air off. So the APU now supplying the packs. And we're going to be coming back down into this cloud layer, this fog, in just a moment's time, so I'll take the engine anti-ice on here as well. Once again, they're just a transitory caution for the switch over on the air. And looking good here in terms of the level off at 2000. Again, max 185, so we can decelerate further should we so wish. And as we discussed during the briefing, we'll slow up towards 160 knots here, just before waypoint Todby. So maintaining 2000, 185 knots. In terms of our landing weight now, just coming down on 40.7. Did use the air brake earlier on just to try and burn off a little bit more fuel, but looks like we're going to be just over max landing weight. Again, in reality, we could have just taken up the hold earlier on.
Cargo 410, route direct to Dover.
So we'll be just on max landing weight or thereabouts for the arrival. Again, pretty short runway. We do have a nice headwind, but we're definitely going to be heating up those brakes to get the aircraft stopped.
Direct over now for polar 410.
They're showing 1900 foot on the rad out, 2000 on the altimeter. Things looking good. 5 miles to run now towards Todby, so we'll keep slowing up. Back towards 160. We'll just hold the flaps at 18 for the time being. And again, holding the gear till around 8 miles, so 13 to run. As we mentioned during the brief, it's a 5.5 degree glide slope into London City, so significantly more than the 3 degrees that most of us are probably used to. And you'll really notice that at the top of descent point for the glide slope. We'll be maintaining 2000 until we're pretty close into the fields, and then we'll come screaming down. Again, we'll use the air brake here, the extra drag to help keep the speed back. So 160 knots down speed, that's going to help us here for the turn. We'll just keep the aircraft in LNAV for now till we come through waypoint odd leg, and then we can arm up the approach. And showing now 11 miles to run, so another 3 miles will take the gear. So once more, the RJ certainly offers a lot more automation than the 146. In that respect, I do find it a little bit more pleasant perhaps to fly, certainly more relaxing. But as you can see as well, still quite a lot of manual input here required from the pilot. So just coming around the corner. We'll try and spot a few buildings here as we go. So we've got the Shard there out at our 1 o'clock. I believe that's the highest building in London, and indeed in the UK. We've got Battersea Power Station down there at our 11 o'clock. It's just coming over the River Thames.
Hello, left heading 170 degrees, and we will be level 350 by detect jet set 3049. Thank you.
And we've got the older CBD area out there at our 2 o'clock, which we're going to be flying past on the way in towards London City. So approaching odd leg again, you can see keeping the speed back there helped a little bit in terms of the aircraft's turn radius. So the ILS is identified and correct sensing. Again, we'll just wait until we're inbound and then we'll arm up the approach. Down now through 7 miles, we'll take the gear down.
Shamrock 346, contact Brest, channel 132.830 line.
And we'll select the approach mode, so we've got
Flaps 24.
Glide Slope 1, Loc 1 armed. Speed is checked, we've got 3 greens on the gear, we'll come through to flaps 24.
London, good afternoon, Swiss 354, flight level 340.
And about 6 miles to run, we'll get the speed back a little bit early, so again, V approach now 129.
Glasgow.
Twist 354, London, roger.
Okay, localizer just coming in, we should see Loc capture. There's Loc star, take flaps 30. And come all the way through now to flaps 33 for the landing.
Twist 354, report your position.
So there's the CBD, the airfield out just behind it, and again, not great in terms of visibility. You can see we're holding pretty high here, 2,000 feet. In terms of the landing checks then, the gear is down 3 greens, we have flaps 33. Brakes are checked. For the bleeds, once again we've got the APU bleed on, engine bleeds off, engine anti-ice is selected on, we'll take the ignition on here as well. Landing lights are selected on, just coming onto the glides. We'll come back through to Toga here on the TRP. So glide slope just coming in. Once we hit that, there's glide slope capture. We've got 2,000 set for the missed approach. Landing checks is complete. We'll take the air brake. It's going to help keep the speed back here as we come roaring down the glides. So again, really interesting little approach into London City. I can't believe I haven't done it before in the sim. It's great fun. We've got the Millennium Dome there just off the nose, or the O2 Arena I believe it was previously.
540 right, City Tower, continue approach. Continue 549.
Approach next.
Right, 1240.
Fine. And you're still behind.
Checked.
City Island 174, the surface wind 240 degrees, 5 knots, runway 27, clear to land.
Clear to land 270 down, 174. Landing lights.
Super on.
Landing check is complete. 5 minutes to go, goodness is arm.
Jet 5.
Yeah, so again, a great fun little approach, certainly pretty unique. Definitely well worth a try in the sim. And certainly much easier to manage in something like the RJ versus the 146.
Our position is 50 miles south of Alezo.
So approaching 1,000 feet. We are stable.
AB 88, correction, Midland 8865, redirect to Warthog.
We've got 2 reds, 2 whites there on the Pappy. Looking good on the glide slope. Going to take out the auto thrust manually. I always get a little bit of stick for doing this, but it's overall just much easier to do things manually now as opposed to fiddling around later on with various push buttons.
Direct Warthog, Midland 8865.
And we are visual with the runway, so we'll take the autopilot out.
Channel 231 London, good afternoon, redirect to Stickhead.
500
Let's check 500.
minimums.
Okay, there's the MDA, we'll continue. We're not going to finesse the landing here too much, again only 1,500 metres of landing distance available. And of course the flare going to be pretty different here to what we're used to with that high descent rate. We're going to need to flare a little bit more aggressively. I found as well the RJ at the moment does have a little bit of a tendency to bounce, so we'll try and avoid that.
50, 40, 30.
Get off the thrust.
10.
Ground out. Brake pressure checked.
Okay, onto the runway. Brake pressure's checked. Again, using max braking here to get the aircraft slowed up. And comfortable now, we are going to make a reasonable exit down through 60 knots, so we'll ease up on the braking, save the brake temperatures a little bit, and vacate down at the end on mic. So there you go, ladies and gents. I do hope you enjoyed our look at the Just Flight RJ Professional. Once again, the add-on should be releasing fairly soon, within the order of the next week or so. And the RJ Professional, priced at just shy of £53, there will also be a 20% discount for owners of the 146 Professional. Whilst, once again, the version of the aircraft that we looked at here today is technically in early access, and therefore there may be some changes between now and release. Without a doubt, it's already pretty clear to me, hopefully pretty clear as well from the video, that the RJ Professional is going to be another truly excellent Just Flight offering for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Modelling and detailing both absolutely excellent, both inside and outside the aircraft. Not too much to say there really, the visuals I think speak for themselves throughout the video. And the RJ is certainly right up there with the competition when it comes to the visuals. So far as the flight model of the aircraft goes, again a pretty stellar effort from Just Flight overall. I have had a little bit of back and forth with Just Flight previously on this one. Personally, I do find the 146 and indeed the RJ do feel a little bit light on the controls at times. Again, the aircraft did also have a little bit of a tendency to auto-rotate during the takeoff, a bit of a tendency as well to bounce during the landing. Both of those behaviours may well be fixed up at a release, although the bounciness I tend to remember being an issue as well with the 146. I can't say with any certainty how accurate the flight model is, but in terms of enjoyment, the aircraft is very pleasant to fly. The aircraft is pretty easy to fly and there aren't any particularly unusual behaviours. I did have a little bit of an issue with rudder input on a couple of flights. Again, I suspect that's a bug that will be ironed out ahead of release. The RJ seemed to behave pretty well in terms of performing to the numbers, and I would say that the flight model is pretty much on a par with all of the other high fidelity add-ons that we've seen within the sim. Again, that slight lightness on the controls tends to be something that we see typically of Microsoft Flight Simulator aircraft. Systems depth is once again very good, once again right up there with some of the very best add-ons. Most systems on the aircraft are modelled, and it does seem that there is a lot of accuracy and nuance to that system's modelling. Just about the only thing not functioning on the jet are the circuit breakers, which I'm sure for most of you is not a major issue. As we've seen as well during the flight, you can actually induce a number of aircraft systems failures via the tablet. So as with the 146, I think it would be very fair to call the RJ a study level aircraft. And again, in terms of systems fidelity, the add-on is right up there. The same is true of the sounds. Just Flight generally seem to get their hands on the real-world aircraft, and that always shows with their sound packs. These sounds are generally superb, and of course that really helps to bring the aircraft to life. Hearing the real-world engine sounds, system sounds, all of the appropriate knocks and noises. The jet also sounds nice and loud externally, which we don't always see in the sim. And generally speaking, I think given the amount of bespoke sounds recorded and used on the add-on, this is about as close as you're going to get to sitting in an Avro RJ without actually being there. In terms of product extras, again, the add-on is a very strong offering. We've seen already the included onboard tablet with SimBrief and Navigraph integration. As well, we've touched on the additional features, for example, the external ground equipment, the very nicely modelled cabin. As well, there are multiple aircraft options and configurations, and the ability, once again, to set failures. Lastly, as well, it is worth noting, whilst the price point for the add-on is certainly up there in terms of Microsoft Flight Simulator pricing, you are of course getting 3 variants of the aircraft, multiple liveries as well, and certainly if you are making use of the 20% discount as a previous 146 purchaser, overall I think the product offers pretty good value for money. Documentation also up to Just Flight's usual high standards, very detailed, gives you everything you need to know to fly the aircraft both appropriately and professionally. Lots of detail regarding the RJ systems, as well as, for example, the performance envelope of the jet. And once again, you get checklists included on the tablet, as well in the manual, and as well making use of the inbuilt sim checklist feature. Lastly, in terms of FPS, I was taking about a 20 FPS hit with the RJ, getting around 33 FPS under some pretty intense conditions in the sim, versus around 53 under the same conditions with the default Cessna 152. In summary then, once again, this is technically an early access look at the product. There may be a few changes between now and release. As such, I've tried to keep my thoughts and conclusions fairly brief. Whilst Just Flight were kind enough to reach out to me asking whether or not I would like to take a look at the product, hopefully, at least for those of you familiar with the channel, you'll know at this point that that by no means guarantees any favourable review. Of course though, quality is obvious when you see it, when you experience it, and the RJ provides quality in abundance. Once more, I think the RJ really hits the sweet spot. It is a brilliant little aircraft, certainly pretty unique. The RJ probably a little bit more friendly versus the 146. Once again, the aircraft will be releasing very soon. It is another top-notch effort from Just Flight, and I dare say for my money it's got to be right up there in terms of the top few commercial passenger jets available for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Once again guys, I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider giving it a like. If you want to see more content from the channel, then please do consider subscribing as well. And once more, if you would like to help support the channel further, you can do so by becoming a channel member or patron. That would be very much appreciated. On that note, a very big thank you to my channel members and patrons for all of your support. Lastly, another thank you to Just Flight for allowing us to take an early access look at the RJ. And to all of you, I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. Take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.